Lesson 35. Yes, we're trying to finish up Greek history before Christmas, and Christmas is coming next week. And I have my friend here. He's been kind of following me around since Thanksgiving. And I was thinking possibly that, we were finished with him. But not yet, because he has something to do with this lesson too. Do you remember what his name is? He's a little bit airy, as you can see. You're right. This is Aristotle. Aristotle, he taught a lot of Greeks, and in Macedonia and in Athens, he became one of the famous Greek philosophers with Socrates and Plato, and we did a lesson on them. Well, dear Aristotle, you can move over here a little bit so they can see me instead of you. Okay? All right, just stay right there. We ended up with King Philip of Macedonia. What happened? Let's review just a little bit. You see, the Greek city-states were fighting amongst each other. But then as the Medo-Persian Emperor under Darius and King Xerxes and Artaxerxes, they had attacked Greece at different times. And especially Athens, as you remember, we studied about the golden age of Athens. The Athenians did not like to be controlled by the Persian Empire. In fact, they became very angry when the Persian king came in the Battle of Thermopylae under, I think it was King Xerxes, came in and burned Athens. Not just once, but twice. It made the Athenians very mad, and they decided they needed to unite with the rest of Greece. Well, of course, Sparta wasn't too into reuniting with Athens, but Macedonia was. Macedonians in the north, and the king of Macedonia was Philip, and his desire was to be the king of all of Greece and overthrow the Persians. That's what he wanted to do. They met at the city of Corinth, and he was sent to be the military leader, the king, to go in and conquer the Persians. But something terrible happened. King Philip was assassinated. So now he has a couple sons. One of the sons, the oldest son, is not too bright mentally. In fact, he's kind of like an invalid. So the second son would have to take charge. Who was this son? I know Aristotle knows who he is. His name was Alexander. In 356 BC, Alexander, at 20 years old, is made king, and his duty was to go in and finish the job that his father, Philip, had started and throw off the Persian empire. But not only that, Alexander, his ambition was to conquer the world. Well, Alexander would be known as Alexander the Great, and you need to know in history a lot of things about him because he's very famous. And if you go to Greece at any time, a lot of kids are named either Alexandria or Alexander after him, even today. And many times he's just considered the greatest military leader in all of history because you see, Alexander never lost a battle. So let's find out some things about Alexander. I think it'd be very important so that you could remember who he is and kind of get to know what a great ruler like this could be. And really, was he a great ruler? Let's find out. He had been trained, particularly by his father, in going into battle from probably the age of 12 years old. So, in fact, when he was 16 years old, he became a general. Can you imagine being a general of a whole command, a whole army command, when you're only 16? Well, he became very capable. In fact, at one time, he even saved his father's life. He was, in fact, constantly in need of his father's encouragement, and he always wanted to outdo his father. So his father was very important, especially as king. And his mother, whose name was Olympia, well, she was a little bit different, I do say, because she believed that not only was Alexander's father Philip, but that Zeus, the god Zeus, was also Alexander's father. That's a little bit weird, I do say, but that's kind of the way they believed. So she told Alexander all of his life that he was a god, the son of Zeus, and that he was invincible. We'll find out that that's not true, that he wasn't invincible at all. Then the other thing, yes, I know you're hanging around here. Aristotle here, yep, he was Alexander's teacher. Aristotle was from Macedonia, and he knew King Philip, so the king brought him in and had him teach a school there. Not only did he teach Alexander, but he taught a lot of the other very wealthy young men, and as they came in, they became friends of Alexander's students together, and later on, they become Alexander's generals. And you will find out how they worked in unity all together, except until the very end. And that's kind of a sad story, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So he was trained by Aristotle. Aristotle trained him in the Hellenistic, that's a new word, Hellenistic culture. Whenever you see that word, Hellenistic, all it means is Greek culture. So he would train Alexander to bring in the culture, the Greek culture, and the philosophies of Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato's wherever he went. And Alexander did a really good job of that. And we'll find that out a little bit later. Alexander was very tenacious. Why do I say that? He just never gave up. And even when we had wrestling matches, he would go until the very end, and he would never, ever give in. That was his personality. He also loved Greece, and he especially loved Athens. And he visited Athens, and he was very, very angry that the Persians came in and burned Athens down. And he thought, someday I'm going to go into the capital, into the palaces of Persia, Xerxes' castle. I'm going to burn it to the ground. You know that he did that? He was going to get back on what they did to Athens. Yes, sirree. And then there's a story I have to tell you, because you'll find out, that's written in many history books about Alexander and his horse. Well, when Alexander was a child, probably around your age, he always had an interest in horseback riding, yes. But his father had this horse, and this horse couldn't be ridden, they said. Anyone that would try to ride him, the horse would just buck him off, and the horse was completely wild. They thought, we're going to really have to get rid of this horse. And Alexander says, no, don't do that, Dad. I can tame this horse. So he went and gave a time limit of a week or two, and he said, I'll have riding this horse in the next week. Yes, and he talked to this horse, whispered to the horse, and he treated this horse gently. And the horse actually decided, as a horse can decide, to let Alexander ride him. He trusted Alexander. So after that week or two, yes, there was Alexander riding this black wild stallion. His father was very, very proud of him. In fact, his father thought, my son, he could about do anything. And so he said these words. He said, my boy, you must find a kingdom big enough for your ambitions. Macedonia is too small for you. He thought, if you can tame this horse, you can do anything. He named this horse Bucephalus. Probably the most famous horse in all of history is Bucephalus, because Alexander rode him into every battle. So you can imagine, they knew Alexander coming in. There he'd come with Bucephalus, and he'd be recognized. Until Bucephalus died, about 12 years later or more, he died, and not too long after that, Alexander died too. But anyway, that's another part of our story. Let's talk a little bit about his personality, and then I'm going to go on to the next video because I don't want to get this one too long. But his personality, things about him, he was very calculating and smooth. Sometimes he would get violent and impulsive, thinking he was a god. And sometimes he was very trusting. In fact, all of his generals basically let him control because they trusted that through his command, that they would win the battle. He did believe that he was a god, and that was kind of a fault of his. What did he look like? Besides having all these impressive skills and being sitting on his horse and this whole looking up, everybody looking up to him, he was probably kind of short and stocky. He had kind of blondish curly hair. Yeah, kind of like Aristotle's there a little bit. And he was good looking, young. But one thing about him, if you looked into his eyes and you looked directly and as his eyes were open and staring, you'd see something very unusual. He had one brown eye and one blue eye. He figured this was kind of a sign of his superiority in every way, but they would know and recognize him by his eyes. So Alexander, we're going to learn more about his battles really quick, but I wanted to leave right here and stop for a bit because one of the most significant thing about Alexander is that when he went into battle, he brought in the whole Greek culture. How did he do this? Well, never before did armies bring in civilians. And he brought in, when I say civilians, he brought in their engineers. He brought in builders, he brought in surveyors, he brought in architects, he brought in scientists, he brought in teachers and philosophers and historians, all that Aristotle taught him. And as he brought them all into battle and he won the battle, he would basically teach the whole city, the whole village, the whole country on Greek Hellenistic views. In fact, he even taught them the language. Koinonia Greek was the common language. And later on, we'll find that that was the language the first New Testament was written in. And Greece had a lot of influence on all parts of the world, including later on the Christian world. We'll find that because we're going to talk about the Bible in a bit too. So I think I'm going to stop there and give you a break because I keep going with Alexander. Pretty soon you're going to have it whirling in your head. But I hope that you remember that Alexander the Great was one of the greatest military leaders in history. And also that it was prophesied in the Bible what he would do. And also, you know, Alexander the Great, was he so great? Really? He died pretty young, and we'll talk about that too in the next lesson.